Sir, you're live now.
Okay. Hi, all of you. Good evening. Am I audible to everybody? Can you please confirm if we are streaming fine? Can you please confirm, all of you, if I am streaming fine? We don't have responses. Let me check again. Yes, okay. I can see all of you now. Chirag, Akshay, good evening, good evening. So welcome all of you to our next session, discussing GS paper 2. We had one discussion of GS paper 1 2 days ago. Today we'll discuss GS paper 2. GS paper 2 includes polity, governance, topics related to social injustice, and IR. The same pattern, more or less. Before we start off, hi all of you, good evening. Okay, Shaila, good evening. Before we start off, I wanted a quick input from all of you. What was your assessment of the paper? What do you think? Was the paper easy? Was the paper difficult? Did you think it was moderate, manageable? Hi, Sashank, good evening. Sashank, ready? Your assessment, Naveen, hello. I hope I am audible to everybody. Can you tell us quickly what is your assessment of the paper? Because paper 1 was fairly manageable. That was the verdict. Moderate, easy, Abhishek. Okay, Pavan, good evening. It was easy, moderate. Okay. Analytical, Abhishek, if you can qualify what you mean by analytical. Moderate with lengthy. The lengthy argument is there every time. I'm yet to see a year when students have not told us that the paper is lengthy. Good evening. With extra work, we can manage. Okay, so whatever the extra work means, I do not know. You will know better. Okay, fine, fine. Moderate and lengthy. Okay. So, yeah, I think you are more or less on spot. So my assessment, I will leave it for the others to tell us. My assessment is, I do not think the paper was really easy. Because what happens is when we look at the questions and we find certain familiar terms like judicial, the review, accountability, familiar terms like women empowerment, familiar terms like the role of competition commission, familiar terms like SEO. We have heard about terms like Article 356. We have heard about GST and cooperative federalism. The moment we see familiar words, we have a feeling we can do it. So I think that is the trap in this paper. In fact, my assessment is that most of the questions have an element of some trick, something which is going to trap most students if they're not careful about. Nevertheless, I will allow Devinder to start off his analysis. Devinder, can you quickly tell us what is
yes,
your
yes,
verdict? What's
yes,
analysis about the paper?
1 minute, sir. Yes. Okay. Before starting the paper, let's see the meme, one of my colleague Uttam made regarding the paper. After seeing the question on GS2, kahan se aate hain ye question? This was his first expression.
Yes, we have been debating. The moment we are discussing the questions in more depth, the moment we're challenging ourselves in terms of what the questions are, this is the common, ye questions aate kahan se, ye laate kahan se. So good one. Thanks, Uttam. Okay. Yeah, so, please continue.
Overall, in my view, if we see the question paper, the pattern is on the similar line of the last year, but the usage of the word, the usage of phrase in the question was very tricky. specific to the international relation questions. They are switching to the like a phrase kind of the question. If we see the question on the SCO, every question on the IMO, the new question is there. Let's see the overall analysis, the what's kind of the paper it was. So before starting the analysis, we are providing a 2 credit scholarship. You can register for the event for the upcoming Thursday. Everybody is allowed to take this test on Thursday.
21st of September, all of you are invited to take a scholarship test. Based on this test, we'll be providing certain discounts to our advanced course in GS and the integrated course in GS. Based on your marks, your ranking, based on performance, you'll be given some concessions. Irrespective of whether you join us or not, I'll still say take the test, please. It's a nice set of questions. And I think it's the right time to start off a momentum towards the next year preparation. You'll have a fair idea about where you stand. So please feel free to join us. Scan the QR code and let us know you want to participate. And of course, we continue with our offer where we're offering previous year's solved essay paper for all of you free of cost. Scan the QR code and you can take the booklets, which includes a lot of other answer writing, essays writing resources also. Personalities, book summaries, some reference to movies, literature. So it's all there for you at a very marginal cost of $3.99. Okay, and you're free to engage with us. Apart from this, we also have given free of cost a history booklet of previous answers, 2015 onwards. It's all there on the YouTube. Scan and look at the comment section. You'll get the QR codes. Okay, let's start off now.
Okay, let's start the analysis of the paper. If we compare this paper with the previous year paper of year 2022, the level of the question we can see, the level 1 question was on the similar level. The L1 question in the year 2022 was 4. Even in this paper, only the 4 question of the level 1. And if we
for all our viewers, L1 questions are the state questions which we believe you should know, you would have studied. It's in your notes, not very tricky questions. It's more about you memorizing. L3 questions are the tricky ones, interpretation based, analysis based, interlinkages based, and progressively over the years, the L3 questions are increasing across papers, and the intermediate one is L2. So last year, we had about 16 questions L2, L3. This time also 16 questions L2, L3, but L3 numbers have increased.
Now,
okay, from 4 questions, now we have 6 questions L3. Yeah, yes, Devender, please continue.
So if we overall, we can say that the moving toward the harder side, we generally cannot answer the question from our notes. We need to go extraordinary path. We need to link the current affair. We need to read more editorial. We need to link the various GS. Then only we can answer those kind of the question. But the must thing, we need to have our basic strong. Only we can answer those questions. If we are coming on the next slides, level 3 question subject to a division, like from the polity, there was a 1 question only, but from the IA, it's for 2-3 questions. And the governance and social justice, there's some more tricky question there, the 2 questions from the.
In fact, you know what, Devinder, I was expecting this, given the importance of foreign policy, India's engagement with the world, and the rising stature of foreign service itself in some ways. I was expecting IR questions will be of level 3, which are interpretation based, which are based on opinion, based on some in-depth understanding of the issues around us. So one way I'm happy. Just 1 question IR. Last year was L3 type. This time, 3 questions of IR.
Questions are L3 type.
Generally, they ask you 4 to 5 questions of IR related topics, diaspora, organizations, India's institutions, neighboring countries. इस बार of course कोई neighboring countries पे कोई question नहीं है, but otherwise
अलग body like IMO, they asked the question on it. But the one good thing was we expected those themes in our test series, like the themes of this theme of the NATO. We asked the similar kind of the question in our test series. Overall, the hit rate was similar kind of the question. The 8 questions from our only test series in the GS2 only. So it wasn't like when we are looking at the paper, so we are thinking, yeah, ये question भी हमने पूछा, ये question भी हमने पूछा. So it's like a prediction was very good there.
Yes, you managed to get some of the questions right. Yes, yes.
So if we see the traditional themes of the question that already has been asked in the UPSC paper, the basics of the constitution, always we find 1 question there. Urban local body functionality, the question number 3 in most of the paper, you will find even this year and also in the last year, there was a question on the urban and local body. Then the comparison between the parliament, president of the different country, the constitution of a different country, they're repeating these kind of themes. This year also there is a parliament significance or the parliament sovereignty of the UK and India is asked in this paper. Then the question related to the e-governance and the critical tool of e-governance you will find in the paper. Indian diaspora, a favorite question in the one way or the another way. They are repeatedly asking the question on the Indian diaspora. Then the presiding officer, initially they was asking the question on the role of speaker, then they moved to the deputy speaker. Now they're coming to the state legislature. Means they are also following the hierarchy because the number of the questions are limited from the parliament section. So they're moving toward downward the state legislature now. Then the question of the parliamentary committee, we can see the scheme of the vulnerable section. Every time they're asking the scheme on the vulnerable sections. And then the continuation of the court-based question. But this time the number increased. Initially, if there are the 2-3 questions on the court-based, now it increased to up to 6
Talking about
questions.
judicial question on judiciary, right?
Yes, question on judiciary, we can say the question on related to the IR, they're giving us some specific statement related to that's appear like a phrase there. So that's why those kind of the questions also increase. And if we see the change in themes, kahan pe इन्होंने थोड़ा change किया है, they're moving toward the other kind of the questions. Particular theme in the civil society. Initially, they were asking the question on the self-help group, but now they are moving toward the narrower theme toward the civil society and linking them with the legislature. Focus on the justice theme, like they ask the question on NALSA, gender justice, civil society, competition commission of India for consumer justice. Then unconventional theme like the IMO they had asked because there was a leadership by the India related to some of the IMO conventions. Then the mixing of themes of the social justice and the polity. These are the some of the change in this paper we searched about the question they asked in this paper. Then the mark distribution, kis part se kya kya raha? In polity contribute almost 125 marks, the 10 question they asked in the polity. In the governance and the social justice, total marks contributed was 75, and the question is 6. And the international relation, 50, then the question is 4. Means the distribution is the same. Every time in the GS2 paper, we will find 10 questions from polity, 6 questions from governance and the social justice, and division is 3-3 equally, and the 4 questions from the international relation.
In fact, if I'm right in making this comment, I think in the width of the GS preparation, one of the most predictable top subjects of preparation, I think, is polity.
Yes.
Of course, to some extent, economy is not as unpredictable. Otherwise, the width of other topics is fairly wide and sometimes ambiguous. But polity, मुझे लगता है कि बड़ा structured content है. We exactly know what they can ask, what can the focus be, and from the structured content, if they ask 200 marks, that's a very good range of questions to answer. By the way, I'll ask this question to Satyam maybe. Satyam, why do you think GS paper 2 does not get as much marks? I mean, people do score, I'm not saying no, but we find people scoring more in GS paper 4, ethics paper, 3 fluctuates, but 2 जितना होना चाहिए मुझे लगता है उतना marks होता नहीं. Why is that, Satyam? Or am I wrong in reading this?
Sir, you're not wrong in reading this. The thing with GS paper 3 and 4 has been that as far as paper 4 is concerned, I believe it's more of a marking scheme because there have been years when the paper was difficult and yet people got more marks, while there have been years like 2017, for example, in which the paper was fairly easy, but the marks were quite low in GS4. GS3, it is many a times. See, when I'm saying this, of course, there's this qualifying remark of marking scheme in between. So GS3 is more yielding because it is more objective. The subjectivity increases in GS paper 2. Right?
Okay.
So when we talk about the role of parliament or, the role of any person for that matter, where is the role defined? Is it just in the constitution? Is it also in the convention? Is it also by some sort of expectation in a democracy how a certain institution should behave? So the impact of subjectivity increases in GS paper 2. Compared to this,
so while
yes, sir.
So while the scope is defined in terms of what topic they can ask, what themes can they ask, we can predict that. But maybe the time for engagement that they demand could be where the problem is. The kind of interpretation they demand from the same themes, I think that's what you're hinting at. Are you, Satyam?
Yes, sir. The interpretation and what I believe is that probably GS paper 2 is the only paper in which every question can become an essay in itself if you have that bent of mind.
Yes.
That's why it is very important to choose the right words, the right points, confine the question in certain time and space that is constrained in the exam. So it's very easy to go in a certain direction and write down the whole answer in that direction and miss other directions. That's more probable.
More focused writing. Notes. By the way, for all of you uninitiated, I must welcome our panel members. We have with us Devender Saini, we have Uttam Verma and Satyam Chaudhary. Mr. Satyam Chaudhary is in service, IRS officer, IT. He has been part of our Edukemy team for quite some time. Now he's as a visiting panelist with us. Thank you for joining us, Satyam. We have with us Uttam Verma. He's a part of our ACAD team. He kind of heads the quality and the discussions all around content development. And Devender Sani is with us for our current affairs. He also has a very important support for us for the questions that we have in the question test series. So thank you all for joining us. So I think let's get started. But one last question before we start off. Uttam, you are good in polity. I've seen you discuss polity. You have a command on Lakshmikant. I've seen your paper also all tone up. हर जगह कुछ ना कुछ लिखा हुआ है लक्ष्मीकांत के. So आपका sense क्या है इस पेपर के बारे में? What do you think? Easy paper, moderate paper, doable paper, tricky paper? Okay, easy looking but a trap paper. आपका क्या assessment है?
Sir, मेरा assessment इस paper में it is very much tricky, right? For example, if you see the polity-based questions, it's the continuation of code-based questions, right? Code-based questions ज़्यादा आ रहे हैं, but to interpret it right, it makes it very tricky. For example, if we see question number 1, right? तो इसमें बहुत सारे tricky elements हैं, तो बच्चे trap हो सकते हैं. Similarly, in the next questions also, who are entitled to receive free legal aid? Question number 2, for example, it is much factual. So aspirants may do not know कि कौन-कौन है. They may just bluff. Right? So it is much tricky question.
देखने में it looks manageable,
Yes,
but जब घुसेंगे लिखने के लिए we are trapped there.
Yes, sir. Pointers नहीं आएंगे for 10 markers or for 15 markers. Enough points जितना आना चाहिए वो नहीं आएंगे. Yes, sir.
Okay. मतलब ये हाथी के दांत वाले हैं, खाने वाले अलग हैं, दिखाने वाले अलग हैं. इसमें फंस सकता है आदमी. चलो ठीक है, let's get started. Absolutely. Thank you for your comments. So all of you viewers, let's get started. The first question: constitutionally guaranteed judicial independence is a prerequisite of democracy. I repeat, constitutionally guaranteed judicial independence is a prerequisite of democracy. Comment. So should I invite Satyam sir? आप बताएंगे इसमें. Okay, what is this comment and maybe what are the quick pointers, please?
Sir, in this question, it's a good question in the sense that I believe most of the people will miss the part that the focus of the question here is democracy and judicial independence. So what I actually expect that most of the people will end up writing about what is judicial independence or how is it important or those things in general. While there are two important things here. One is it is a prerequisite of democracy. So first thing we need to understand is what is democracy in the first place. Is it elections? If it is elections, even National Republic of China is a People's Republic of China is a democracy. Even North Korea is a democracy. So it's not just elections. The elections must be free and fair. But does that make a country a democracy? It does not. Because the most important ingredients of democracy are the right to free speech, the power to criticize, the power to participate in all parts of government. So when I say participate in all parts of government, we see that even Parliament, before enacting a law, before legislating, there is a general practice of consultancy, right? The draft laws are put in public domain. First the law commission tests water by putting out something that, okay, we are publishing a white paper on this, people give their opinions, then the parliament makes a draft law. So this is a process of consultation in which participation of all the people is ensured. So all this is important. It's not just election, it's way more than that. How do we ensure that all these things take place? How do we ensure that individuals' rights, voices, all things are preserved? They can only be done by giving judiciary independence. Here, the crucial word again is constitutionally guaranteed. Imagine a situation where the judiciary is not guaranteed constitutionally, the independence of the judiciary is not guaranteed constitutionally. It shall be very easy for the government to simply take the, the independence away. It shall be very easy. So what we are literally seeing is that basically what the question is basically asking, that judiciary and the government / parliament, there is a separation of power which is constitutionally guaranteed. If that separation of power is not there, if that constitutional guarantee of independence is not there, judiciary will become just another what has been touted as caged parrot or whatever, right? So in India, again, we see there are many provisions for protection.
So if I repeat your words, we have to be careful that the question is not read as importance of independence of judiciary. Okay. That's what I think most will write down. It is importance of judiciary in the reference of democracy. That's one. Second is, okay, how this independence of the judiciary is a part of a constitutional obligation. Okay,
Yes,
ये दो word miss छोड़ा हमने, तो independence of judiciary on its own makes no sense. Okay, so all our viewers must be aware of this. That's where the trick is. So for that, what Satyam is telling us is, first you must list down what is democracy. Democracy is free for elections. It is freedom of speech. It is rule of law. It includes separation of powers. It includes rights of minorities. Then one by one, we have to tell us how this is ensured by the judiciary that has constitutional guarantee. Yeah, Satyam, it's for my benefit. I was trying to rephrase it. Please continue. Yeah, great.
No, sir, you have aptly rephrased it. Just some facts can be added in the answer, just as part of some provisions of the constitution, like Article 50 or Article 124, etc., can be added just to show how the judicial independence has been ensured by the constitution itself. In fact, it can be expanded to add the fact about appointment in the judiciary, which is controlled by the collegian system of the judiciary itself. So that I think can be done just to wholesome cover the answer. The basic fundamental idea has already been discussed. The facts are, I guess, very easy to find in this question.
Okay, I think excellent. I like this conversation. Okay, so all of viewers, please be mindful of those 2 points. Okay, make sure you're talking in reference to democracy and asserting the idea of constitutional guarantee of judiciary, not simply independence of judiciary. Yeah,
So
we move on now.
Sir, in the end, I would like to add this. To conclude this, we can also add, or we can refer to the body of National Judicial Commission.
Yes.
It was actually recommended by National Commission to review the working of Constitution. So basically, it was a mechanism. It was the participative mode for both executive and judiciary, right? So it's a conflict kam hoga, and it was headed by basically CGI. So just one recommendation.
All our viewers, if you're hearing us talk and discuss, do put in your comments also. Do let us know what you think about the questions. And if the discussion is giving you some insight into the ability to understand. So our discussion here is not to tell you what the answer is, but tell you how to decode and to analyze the question and the scope of what the answer should be. Okay, let's move on now. Second question, who are entitled to receive free legal aid? Assess the role of National Legal Services Authority, NALSA, in rendering free legal aid in India. So I think it is Devender going for this. Yes, Devender, please do the honors, please.
The question is about the NALSA and the free legal aid. Before discussing,
पहले बताओ कि ये NALSA in general बच्चे पढ़ते हैं क्लास में कि नहीं पढ़ते हैं? Because I think I'm guilty of owning the fact कि हमारे क्लास में NALSA हमने नहीं कराया था. So
in the sense
in general बच्चे पढ़ते हैं या नहीं पढ़ते हैं?
हाँ, जनरल अगर हम करंट अफेयर पर्सपेक्टिव से देखें तो this body was in the news from the last 2-3 years. Even in the UPSC Prelims, there was a question related to NALSA in 2020. And even in the previous UPSC paper, like in 2013, there was a question also NALSA similarly. So we cannot separate the preparation of prelims and the mains. In this paper also, we see the
So
multiple
this topic has
questions.
been asked earlier. It's our
Yes,
miss.
sir. Yes,
2013 में पूछा है, 2020 में भी पूछा है.
yes, sir. The same
Okay,
question
and-
related to the legal service authority. And even in the
Right.
2020, the option like frame, they are giving the fact about the NALSA. If we see the second part of the question, the assess the National Legal Service Authority, free legal aid in India. The similar kind of the fact was given in the prelim statement. So we can say
criteria was given there.
Yes, criteria was given there. So if we see the first part of the question, who are entitled for the receive the free legal aids, we can say like a disabled and elderly person, women and the children can receive the free aids, widow and the transgenders, even the SC/ST community related, those who are like a refugee from the war crimes also can get the free aids in India. So the first
Okay.
part is very simple of this question, who can get the free legal aids? That's given in the NALSA Act. Even the Article 39A in India, the DPSP, Directive Principle of State Policy, is regarding the right to free legal aid. So we can start our introduction with the Article 39. Then we can tell us this about the who can get the free legal aid. That's the requirement.
Free legal aid is part of Article 39A.
Yes, sir. Right to free legal aid. That's
and the beneficiaries can be the disadvantaged groups largely.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Fine. I think this can be managed thereafter.
If we are
But in terms of assess the role, yeah.
Yes, here we need some data regarding what's the role, specifically role of the NALSA here. There's a tagline for is the accessible justice and affordable justice. That is the tagline of the NALSA.
Okay.
Then if we can come to the Legal Service Act of 1987 that provide the legal services aids, then there's establishment of a Lok Adalat under the NALSA, which almost resolved the 6.6 lakhs cases related to the free legal aid. So that data is need to be added in this question. Without data, the question is incomplete. It also promote the legal awareness in the citizens, and also the like the Nyay Bandhu scheme related to the justice, also started by the NALSA. So these are some of the facts we need to write here. The question is very simple, but in the second part we need to add some data and the
मुझे लग रहा है ये question number 1, question number 2 दोनों tricky question थे.
Yes, yes.
Question number 2 मुझे लगता नहीं है anybody would have prepared. And I was seeing some of the discussions online, बाकी channels कर रहे थे. None of them were telling us examples के through कि how NALSA is doing good or bad. Okay, so fine. I think we are done with this question. Question number 2, tricky question. Most of us could not have anticipated, but here is some support from us. Guys, I will think I'll skip question number 3. It's a straight question. Urban local bodies, functionally and financially, they are not being supported by the whole entire system. I'm skipping question number 3. It's a straight question. All of you would have read it. I'm told Lakshmikant mein kitab hai. 30 years of PRI hai, to question पूछना था. Okay, so this can be done. I'm more keen to move on towards question number 4. मुझे question number 4 बहुत मजा आया पढ़ते हुए, because somewhere we found the trap here. Compare and contrast the British and the Indian approaches to parliamentary sovereignty. Now, guys, all of you listening to us online, your syllabus does mention a comparative study of constitution across the world. Our questions आए हैं India, US, India, UK. I think India, France भी शायद पूछा हुआ है. Yeah, yes. But the problem with this question is, the question is not about comparing the two constitutions. मैंने कम से कम 3 discussions देखा online में by other institutes and channels. They all were discussing comparing British and Indian constitution. Here the question is, compare, contrast the approaches to parliamentary sovereignty. Okay, and I had a harrowing time elaborating this. So I will leave it to, I think, Uttam will take this up, right? No, or is it, yeah, I think it's Uttam taking up. Yeah, Uttam, do the honors, please. Okay, बताएं कि how do you compare parliamentary sovereignty? And maybe others can chip in. Okay, so Uttam and Devendra also. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, so we have to basically see how these constitutions have evolved and how basically approach क्या रहा है parliamentary sovereignty की तरफ, right? For example, Indian parliamentary sovereignty is basically limited by constitution, right? But if you compare it to the British, if we compare it with the British constitution, their parliament has been supreme. उनका पार्लियामेंट सुप्रीम है. क्यों है? क्योंकि उनके पास रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन नहीं, राइट? उनका बेस्ड ऑन कन्वेंशंस होता है. हमारे यहाँ दे आर बिन रिटन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस, they have unwritten constitution. Second thing, sir, there has been basically in Indian constitution हमारा फेडरल नेचर होता है. वहां पावर शेयरिंग होती है यूनियन और स्टेट्स के बीच में, राइट? सो देयर हैज बीन अ डिवीजन ऑफ पावर्स बेस्ड ऑन यूनियन लिस्ट एंड स्टेट लिस्ट. तो सेंटर और पार्लियामेंट हैज बीन लिमिटेड इन मेकिंग लॉज कंपेयर्ड टू ब्रिटिश मॉडल. वहां वो यूनिटरी है. There has been no power sharing. And the last point I would like to add that जो constitutional amendment होता है हमारा, वो basically limited by judiciary होता है हमारा. For example,
Yes.
हाँ, NJAC was basically abolished by Supreme Court. जबकि British में ऐसा केस नहीं होगा.
So British parliamentary supremacy is almost absolute.
Sir, I
Yes,
would
sir.
like to
Okay. उनका
add here.
constitution नहीं है. Yeah.
Yes, sir, I would like to add here. Actually, it's about how different countries have evolved and how their polity has evolved. So, if we look at British Parliament and the evolution of the British democracy, the only thing that they probably cared about was limiting the power of the king. So there was this glorious revolution in I think 1680 somewhere. Yes, 1688. So there was this glorious revolution in which the king was changed and the new king was instituted by the parliament. So that gave parliament the all power, right? So their whole goal was always to limit the power of the king. That is how the whole polity has evolved. There is a contrasting polity called USA, right? So in USA, we see this freedom struggle against British, the very British who were making laws for them, right? So they realized that even the parliament can be tyrannical because they were not happy with the laws that the British parliament was making for them. So they limited the power of the parliament itself by putting down a written constitution. When India got its independence, it saw the best models from different countries and it realized that yes, parliament can be tyrannical and the parliament's power should itself be limited. Therefore, the British parliament is absolutely sovereign while the Indian parliament is not. There is a judicial check which is not there simply in the British parliament. So this is the fundamental difference in the approach.
All our viewers and listeners, you must appreciate the fact that the UPSC is really getting into deeper aspects of constitution and polity. This question very nicely put, Satyam. Great. In UK, the parliament is supreme because they wanted to challenge the king. In US, because they found that the parliament itself was unfair, so they ensured to make parliament not the supreme and sovereign. And we followed something on that line. Yes. So in Britain, parliamentary sovereignty is almost absolute. It is unchallenged. There is no judicial check on parliamentary sovereignty in Britain. And parliament, whatever it does, cannot be questioned, almost on those lines. In India's case, parliament is limited by the constitution. So can I say, I don't know what I'm asking you, can we say in India then the constitution is sovereign? Should we say that?
Sir, it is actually the people who are sovereign.
People who are sovereign.
People of India have given ourselves the constitution. Right. So it's the people of India who are the sovereign. And one more small thing, sir, I would like to point out from what I was already discussing is that so when the US framed its constitution, they actually swung the pendulum way too much in the other direction. They gave judiciary way too much power. So in US, the judiciary has too much power, but Indian constitution makers had that wisdom to see, okay, this is also not something that should be done. And they have, struck a very nice and good balance between parliament and judiciary. In fact, that will come up later in, as I guess, question number 11. If we discuss, it will come up then.
Excellent. Very happy.
One thing, sir, in this question. But recently, the sovereignty of the British Parliament is also challenged in the court, in the Supreme Court of the UK. And also due to some global treaty and due to some of the human rights action, the sovereignty of the Parliament was recently challenged in the British.
Oh, okay. That's a new development. Fine. I think our listeners have a perspective now. Hi, Nadia. Akshay, Nadia is telling us that this particular idea is in the last paragraph in the Parliament chapter. Okay, in Lakshmikant. Okay, Nadia, we'll have a look. Thanks, Nadia, for the input. So she says that there is a reference to this in the last paragraph of Parliament chapter. So team, we must look this up. Nevertheless, I think great going here. Let's move on. The next question number 7. Competition Commission of India. Like, I think we will let this go. It's a straight question. Question number 7. Sorry?
Question number 6 first. We will discuss.
Question number 6. Of course, question number 6. The crucial aspect of development. Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed out, viewers and listeners. The crucial aspect of development process has been the inadequate attention to human resource development in India, and suggest how can we address this inadequacy. This is the social injustice topic. Yeah, so the problem of development is we have missed out something on human resource development. Yeah, Uttam, please go for this. Question number 6. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, so in this question, sir, हमको देखना पड़ेगा कि कौन सा basically components है human resource development का. So if I can see, I can point out that education is one component, health is one component, safety is one component, skilling is one component, right? Nutrition is one component. So these are the multiple components we can see. For example, the question asked the crucial aspect of development has been the inadequate attention paid to human resource development, right? So we need to see the status of human resource development in India. Yeah.
So here
ये पूछ रहा है question.
means we will start the introduction with some of the data that having
Yes.
telling us about what's the status of the HDI in India, specifically
Yes.
human development का status क्या है. तो उसके बाद we will start according to dimension wise, ना? Okay, go on.
Yes. So first part we can address basically education, right? So if we see, or we have to back it up with data. For example, in higher education institutions, there has been only 33% basically gross enrollment ratio is there. So which is very less compared to world average, right? Around 1 lakh schools have only 1 teachers, which are basically small and unviable schools. So we can see the status of education, right? If we compare it to the skills part, so only 4% of the population have formal skilling compared to 96% in South Korea, right? So basically we can see there is very low formal skilling, and that too वो integrate नहीं होते हैं formal skilling. ठीक है? And then if we see that according to like NASCOM report, around basically 46 to 50% basically engineering graduates are unemployable. In health part also there has been higher infant mortality rate around 32, right? Around more than 50 to 55% women are anemic in the reproductive age according to National Family Health Survey 4. Right. So these are actually, this question demands a lot of data. It needs to be backed up by data to make your points very credible. Right. So you can write the status there. Right.
Means we need to add the data here with respect to the different organization. We need to code those organizations, even it's about the National Family Health Survey, even it's about the Ministry of Education or the education report by the Niti Aayog or the NCRB data. We need to fulfill the demand of the question through data.
Yes, yes. So we can see the status.
One point I would like to add here. I think maybe, in my opinion, if I was trying to answer, I would start by saying that yes, in the last 15, 20, 25 years since reforms, India has made incredible progress in terms of development, GDP, our per capita income, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of energy, in terms of technology, expansion of sectors like pharmaceuticals. But this type of growth has been very unequal. And the inequality is perhaps most perceptible in our human resource development under the social aspects. Social components of development has not been equal. I would have started there and then would have mentioned, okay, these are the gaps that we have. So all of this may be in the first half page, okay, and then start off with what all can we do to ensure that this problem is corrected. So that would have been my approach if yes, I was attempting. Yeah, please continue.
Yes, sir. And after that, we need to see the reasons why it exists, basically, why basically it is the status or reality, right? So there has been basically in health, if you see in health sector, there has been high out of pocket expenditure. right? According to World Bank, there it is around 60 to 60%, right? So basically, there is high income inequality. Around 1% of the population holds 58% of the wealth, according to Oxfam report, right? So there has been basically, you can see the reasons, right? So if you see the funding part also, funding भी बहुत कम है, health sector में भी कम है, education में भी कम है. Education में around 2.9% है, health में around 2.1% है. And why is it so? Why is it so? Because road based learning है, एक industry academia का linkages नहीं है. There has been lot of vacancies, right? So these are the conditions or reasons basically why this status exists. Now coming to the other part, or we can discuss basically क्या measures लेने चाहिए, right? So we need to be basically increase the funding, plug infrastructure gaps, right, Devendra? We can do that.
Yes, the major thing I can say here, the accessibility. If we are accessible, health is accessible, education is accessible, skill is accessible to the lower strata of the society, so we can move toward the providing the education, health, and the skills to the people of the country. Na? So that's why why there's a less focus on the human development. Human development specifically include the health, education, and the skills, and the living standard also. So we need to be focused on the accessibility and the availability. And finally, I will add to the third A, that's the accountability. Accountability of the government. That's maybe they are providing the scheme to the people, but ये पहुंच रही है या नहीं पहुंच रही है to the lower strata, and उसका outcome क्या है? Means the outcome based scheme we need to be look on. जिसकी वजह से we can move on the human development.
And the last thing I would like to add, we need to also focus on increasing the capability. Our government is basically spending on schemes, but are the people capable to basically receive and basically utilize that resource into efficient and become efficient, right?
Yeah, that's the gap between our education sector and the skill set. जो हमें क्लास में पढ़ाया जाता है वो हमारे इंडस्ट्री में यूज ही नहीं होता है. That's the biggest gap we have.
Yes.
Right. So basically broad areas में what are we doing and what can we do in education? What are we doing? What can we do for health? Similarly, development in terms of your employment generation, in skilling. So fine enough. I think this is not as tricky. This could be managed with a bit of understanding. Let's move on now. Question number 7. I think I will let it skip because it's a straight question more or less. But yes, the trick could be the recent decisions. Maybe in some other context we'll discuss it. Okay, let's move on towards question number 8. Again, E8, I think e-governance is a fairly straight question. Do we have any discussions for this, Uttam or Devender?
No, sir. It's a straight question, and every time UPSC is asking the similar kind of the question on the e-governance.
E-governance was a straight question.
Yes, sir. On effectiveness, transparency, and accountability. Every time they're asking the same question on the same theme.
Okay, fine. Okay. So I think that's good enough. Question number 9 is a very interesting question. It's my domain. Okay, IR. Of course, I will want Uttam, Devender, Satyam to also pitch in. The virus of conflict is affecting the functioning of SCO. In the light of above statement, point out the role of India in mitigating the problems. See, what I want to add here is, if you look at IR questions, none of the questions are straight questions except for diaspora. 4 question पूछते हैं. इस बार कोई question neighboring countries के से नहीं है. We have got questions on organizations, institutions, and we have question on diaspora. और 2 questions पूछ दिया है from the organization. SCO पूछा है.
And IMO.
And they have asked NATO, and of course IMO also, correct. IMO is organization. So now none of them have asked about what is SCO, importance of SCO, India's implication. ऐसे नहीं पूछा है. इसमें पूछा very specifically that SCO has problems of conflicts. SCO में there are a lot of divergence of ideas, views, and it's understandable. देखो, if you look at the membership of SCO, suddenly SCO has the Central Asian countries. It includes Afghanistan as observer status. We have Azerbaijan. We have got Armenia. We already had Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China to hai hi. Iran and Pakistan have permanent status. So does Russia. और इसमें सारे conflicting वाले हैं. China, Pakistan, conflicting with India. We have a problem of Armenia, Azerbaijan as conflicting. There's a lot of fear of Central Asian countries because of BRI and China's expansion, somewhere even challenging their sovereignty in their regions. So this is becoming increasingly a conflict-prone society, say grouping. Although this grouping was seen as anti-West to some extent, because none of the Western countries are part of SCO, neither US nor European. It was seen as a kind of counter to NATO. Some of them have called this as the Asian NATO or Central Asian NATO. Okay, that was, it was developing, but iske andar mein there is lot of divergence. Unlike NATO, where the countries are more developed, they have got better industries, better capability to fight. Yahan par, these are drought-ridden countries. There are problems of migration, problems of terrorism. So yes, okay, this is a grouping which has lot of conflicts within itself. A question पूछ रहा है that tell us what can be the role of India in mitigating the problems. So I think somewhere we must understand the whole idea of why India entered SCO. India always knew this is a kind of a Chinese initiative starting from Shanghai 5, or kahin na kahin this is riding on China's ambition to dominate the geopolitics of Central Asia and Eurasia. With Russia, they wanted to become another important power fulcrum. India joining this primarily was not to allow the space entirely to China. India wanted a part of an organization where China is dominant. That was the idea. Now, what can India do to mitigate? If I list down 3-4 things. Number one, India with SCO is committed to the idea of multilateralism. Okay, we will not be part of supporting any one group, any one bloc. We should not be allowing the growth of anybody unchecked, whether it is NATO or the US or Russia or China. So what is India trying to do in mitigating conflict is, number one, India is committed to multilateralism. And the same we will try even in SCO. SCO may be discussions as far as possible, consensus-based is what is being promoted. So that's one. Second is, I think somewhere India has been very smart and very responsible, because agar dekha jayega, India has the maximum in terms of intensity. India's conflict with China and India's conflict with Pakistan can actually stall entire SCO. Typically what has happened for SAARC. But what India has done, and India is encouraging, is to keep all these conflicts at a bilateral level without allowing for entire SCO to become trapped in these conflicts. The SAARC conflicts to keep it bilateral. India-China, keep it bilateral. India-Pakistan, keep it bilateral. If India has the issue with Maldives, wo bhi uska bhi status hai, observer status, keep it bilateral. India-Sri Lanka mein disagreements mein hai, we have kept that bilateral. We have not taken any bilateral issues, okay, at the level of SCO, so much so that even when China was encroaching and getting ambitious at our border, we did not let India-China conflict come into the way of SCO functioning. That's a very good model in managing and keeping SCO relevant. The third very important is India, China ka tha ambition, of course, but India is doing it very smartly. SCO is not being developed as a military alliance. Otherwise, it will be centered around the conflict against the West. The whole idea of SCO, where we would want to push forward, is the idea of developing connectivity within the countries and to develop a narrative of counter-terrorism, to develop an environment of security-based discussions, plus, of course, to deal with issues which are priority issues like Afghanistan reconstruction. So SCO is a very development-based approach now. So in fact, these are three important themes that India wants to promote: connectivity, counterterrorism, and Afghanistan. So number one, I said, India committed to multilateralism. Number two, India not allowing bilateral conflicts to overpower. And we're keeping all discussions of disagreement at the level of bilateral engagement. The third is there's a development focus, keep it at the level of connectivity, roads, trade, and so on. And a fourth very important thing is that India is committed to ensuring that SCO also starts to engage as far as possible at the level of cultural engagement also, where cultural engagement with Afghanistan, with Azerbaijan, with Armenia, with Kazakhstan, with Maldives, Sri Lanka. So it has a more diverse agenda to deal with, rather than becoming an organization which is a military alliance like that of NATO. So these are the 4 points. And of course, now India is inking other agenda of development collaboration, like development collaboration in defense, development collaboration in space technology, development collaboration in health, development collaboration in pharmaceuticals. So with this, it is keeping SCO very well balanced, development focused, and not allowing the conflicts to take over. So that's my input. Any questions from the rest, please? Okay. In fact, one document says that the agenda of SCO, like our Mr. Modi has proposed, the agenda of SCO should be to promote the idea of connecting the region, uniting the people, development for all, respect for sovereignty and integrity, and security of citizens. Short form mein, the secure agenda of SCO, SECURE. S is security for all, E is economic development, C is connectivity for all, U say uniting people, respect for sovereignty and integrity, and E say environmental protection also. These 6 pillars will ensure that India has a very positive role to play in ensuring that SCO is not trapped in this virus of conflict. Yeah, anybody, any doubts, any questions, you can discuss. Maybe Satyam, you would like to contribute something on this, please?
No, sir, I think that was itself a very comprehensive discussion. So I guess we have given it a considerable amount of time.
Okay, so let's move on in that. The next question we are taking up is, I think question number, I'm skipping question number 10, is a straight question, diaspora, not of much significance. Yes, this I think is a good question. Question number 11. 11, the Constitution of India is a living instrument with capabilities of enormous dynamism. It's a constitution made for progressive society. Illustrate with special reference to the expanding horizons of the right to life and personal liberty. Before we move on, one request to all of you. On 21st of September, we have a scholarship test based on which we will offer some concessions to our flagship programs, GS Advanced and GS Integrated. So 21st of September, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please be part of this test. Yes, Satyam, if you can continue on this conversation, please. Question number 11.
Yes, sir. In question number 11. So question number 11 is interesting because there are 3 things that I would like to point out. First is, it talks about Constitution of India being a living instrument with capabilities of enormous dynamism. So the Constitution is dynamic. It is a living document, living instrument, whatever. Second part is, when it says it is a constitution made for a progressive society, the word progressive society is different from the previous part of the first sentence of the question. Why? Because dynamism can be regressive too. It need not necessarily be progressive. We have seen many constitutions that have gone downhill because of their dynamism, because of them having the capability to be amended very easily, and that imparted dynamism and flexibility in them. But more often than not, such constitutions have been relegated into becoming a document that's worse for the country than a good one, than a better one. And the third part is special reference to the expanding horizon of right to life and personal liberty. So these are the 3 parts, right? So as far as Constitution being a living instrument is concerned, I guess there is a particular chapter in the textbook of class 11 called Constitution as a Living Document. It's a whole chapter, right? So that part is very basic. However, that chapter mostly discusses amendment procedure, etc., etc. What we need to understand is 3-4 more levels, right? First, it can be amended. That's why it is, dynamic. It is open to interpretation at many levels. So Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the question of the Constitution, final interpreter. But many other, agencies or officers or officials interpret the Constitution. For example, within Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, the chairpersons are the final interpreter. So the interpretation of the Constitution is open altogether. When lawyers argue a case in the court, they interpret in their own way, right? So that is another thing. The third thing which shows that it is dynamic is that we have not changed the Constitution, as in we have amended the Constitution 105 times in these years, but we have not changed the Constitution. A typical example will be Sri Lanka. Another typical example would be Nepal. How many constitutions has Nepal already seen by now? The first constitution came barely, I believe, less than 20 years ago, and yet it has seen 4 or 5 constitutions. So we have not changed the constitution, we have just amended it. That shows that it is dynamic, right? It allows for even judicial innovations, right? So we have basic structure doctrine. In fact, we were just discussing the reference that I was making there, how Indian constitution provides an apt balance between parliament and judiciary. That itself allows for dynamism, because judiciary interprets it in a certain way, parliament can amend to provide it a new form of interpretation, right? So I will now move to the second part, which is it is a constitution made for a progressive society. So progressive, as we already talked, it's not just about being dynamic, but it's about progressive. First part is fundamental rights. Even the question in the last part is talking about special reference to the horizons of right to life and personal liberty. So the fundamental rights are designed so beautifully. The right to equality does not simply say equality before law. It also says equal protection of the law. So positive discrimination is ingrained in the very fundamental right that is talking about right to equality. It is, understood that two people placed unequally cannot be treated as equal as far as law is concerned. The Montesquieu's famous idea that alike cannot be treated as like, that being the whole idea here. Then we look at directive principles. There is a very interesting directive principle that I would like to read out for the purpose of this session. There is directive principle in Article 38, which says the state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall inform all institutions of national life. You should look at the horizon of the Constitution. It's not talking about just the negative of the state. As a state, you just have to provide education or health. No, it's talking about securing a social order that is just, and that informs all institutions, not just the public institutions, but also the private ones. It's a very visionary document in that sense. So we can clearly see that Constitution is also for a progressive society. The last part is, adding the special reference to right to life and personal liberty. We have seen as examples are quoted here, there have been multiple cases, right to privacy, right to vent, Navto Singh George's judgment where 377 was decriminalized. What is important here is there is a very important statement made by Professor Upendra Bakshi. I would just tell one thing about the professor, which will make students appreciate. There is a provision in the Constitution that allows for legal experts to become justices of Supreme Court. Professor Upendra Bakshi is the only person in the history of India who had been offered such a position, as in the justice of the Supreme Court, by this provision. He did not accept it. That's a different matter altogether. But he's the only person who has been offered. So he is an authority in himself. And he said that by expanding the Article 21, that is right to life, the Supreme Court has mutated directive principles into fundamental rights. So directive principles are about
Wow.
clean air and pollution, right to life includes that. So right to life and personal liberty, the way these two rights have been expanded to incorporate more and more provisions, that has, that signifies how the Constitution provides. And how was it expanded? That is what. Was it expanded just through judicial interpretation? First point that should be noticed, that judiciary only interprets, right? Whatever the judiciary is saying is already written in the Constitution. There was this simple doctrine that there should be harmonious interpretation of the whole Constitution. Instead of apparent conflict between rights and directive principles, the Supreme Court said that they should be read harmoniously, and that is what has led to this. Right? So the Constitution already provided for it. That was the first step why it could be done. So now we can, the factual examples are already here put down in the slides. We can write that, but
One point I would like to make for all our listeners and viewers, and thanks Satyam there. It is very important that this question is not read as Constitution is living document and stop there. Most of the people will keep talking about, yes, it can be amended. These are the amendments. These are the changes. These are the alterations. The question is very important. That's what Satyam is trying to focus on. The talk about Constitution of India as a living instrument which is dynamic in reference to right to life in particular, in reference to personal liberty in particular. What all have we changed, expanded? What all have we added? Okay, to ensure that the Constitution's commitment to progressive elements of personal liberty, life, is what we have to bring out in the answer. So just emphasizing that point, Satyam, please continue. Please continue.
So to add to this, just a last point, and it is actually important to highlight. Constitution was amended to even limit the right to freedom or the right to liberty. It must be understood here. In fact, there was a question in prelims some time back that absence of law leads to loss of freedom. It does not lead to more freedom, because if in case of absence of law, there can be anarchy in the society, which leads to clear discrimination and loss of freedom for people. It's about the law should not be too much. It's about the hitting the right balance, right? So the Constitution beautifully, again, through amendment, the right to a freedom or the right to liberty itself has been limited, but only to a certain extent. It has given clear-cut regions on which grounds the law can limit the right. So it has strike that balance, right? So that itself shows that it's expansion of the right. If we look at it, that it's simply the bell-shaped curve, right? If we think on those lines, you keep on increasing freedom at a particular point by decreasing the law. At a particular point, the freedoms will actually start decreasing. If we quote, the number of laws here and the number of I guess the idea is clear there. I guess this question is
it's answered now. Excellent discussion here. So all our viewers and listeners, you can take down these points, and that's why I said the question paper is tricky. दिखने में तो straight लग रहा है, but the moment it narrows down the scope, talk only about personal liberty, talk only about right to life, and tell us examples there. I think that's where the challenge starts. Thanks a lot. Let's move on from here. Question 11, we are done. I think question number 12 is more or less not as tricky, but yes. No, question number 12 is tricky. It is. Explain the constitutional perspectives of gender justice. Okay, so I think, I don't know if how many of you have focused on the word called perspectives. In how many ways does the Constitution see gender issues should be taken up? What are the perspectives? Not simply what is the Constitution doing for gender empowerment, if nahi. Kya perspective hai? And then it says, tell us with the help of relevant constitutional provisions and case laws, ना अब मेरे ख्याल से पॉलिटी में ये लॉज एग्जाम्पल्स पढ़ना और अनिवार्य हो गया. Not simply knowing the article and the provisions, you must know the cases also. So somewhere you had already become an economist and an environmentalist and a cultural specialist. Now you have become a lawyer also by the time you are done with GS preparation. Yeah, Devendra, I think you should go for it. Please do the honors.
Yes, sir. The question is about the gender justice, specifically the perspective of gender justice. When we talk about justice, we generally talk about the conventional course of justice, that is the rule of law. हम mainly rule of law के बारे में ही बात करते हैं. But gender justice is not only the judicial recourse, it also defining the rights of gender, specifically related to the right of women. Like the every fundamental right, the explicitly mentioned about the rights is irrespective of the sex, means they are specifically about the different genders. If we see the article number 15, article number 16, or the article right to equality there. Then the financial independence, the right related to the cultural rights, they specifically the mention about the gender justice, and we can continue with that. In that case, if we are coming to the gender justice respected to, like there's a recent case about the women rights, in the rights related to the reproductive rights, the woman is not mere a biological to complete the biological needs. They are having a specifically rights related to gender. So we need to be mentioned these kind of the example when you start writing the answer related to the gender justice. And the question in the second part, they're asking us about the constitutional perspective of the gender justice, means in the constitution where the specifically mentioned about the gender justice. तो हमें वो चीजें highlight करनी होंगी specifically, even it's the fundamental rights, even it's the directive principle of state policy, even it's about the fundamental duties, जहाँ पर वो specifically genders के बारे में बात कर रहा है. Even recalling example related to the fundamental duty, the article 51 specifically, the article 51 in the fundamental duty is talking about the dignity of woman. Dignity of woman, they're focusing on the phrase the dignity of woman, and that directly linked to this question, the gender justice, the perspective of gender justice in the Indian Constitution. Then in the case of the Panchayati Raj institution, that where the political related gender justice, where they're providing the reservation to the woman, even now in the special session of the Parliament, we can see here, they are talking about the 33% reservation to the woman in the Parliament. That also a perspective of the gender justice here. Then if we are coming to the political empowerment under the Article 325, the participation and the representation of the woman again. And in the case of the ban on the triple talaq, the judgment related to the Shabbir case, the judgment related to the triple talaq, and even we can say there's the formation of the permanent commission of the army specifically for the woman. So these are the new addition, these are the new constitutional provision which are providing specifically telling us about the gender justice and their constitutional perspective. Exactly what the constitutional thing about the gender. The constitution में क्या-क्या चीजें हैं about gender justice that we need to be right.
If I'm summing up this, Devendra, if may I allow.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So the perspective क्या-क्या है कि gender justice in terms of political empowerment, ये perspective है. Gender justice in terms of right to work, economic perspective hai. Gender justice in terms of right to seek abortions, that's somewhere the biological
Social,
dignity
social,
on their own body,
perspective.
reproductive rights wala hai.
Yes.
Okay. इसके अलावा somewhere it has also supported some of the other laws, constitution laws के साथ में we have had this POSH, we have POSCO, so that Vishakha guidelines कहीं न कहीं government, constitution and judiciary की वजह से आया है. And it also talks about gender justice from the perspective of the third gender also.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Very clearly बताया गया है कि we have to decriminalize 377. So
Yes, sir.
that way, gender perspective के perspectives क्या हैं justice के? Perspectives, economic perspective, political perspective,
social perspective,
the biological was there's an economic perspective, and this. Okay. Am I covering all the points? कुछ छूटा हमारा यहाँ पे?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like other specific cases, we are remembering the case, so we can mention a different case, like the Mary Roy case, where the equal property distribution for the male and the female. The case of the homosexuality, the Navtej Singh Johar. If we are adding these name case, so we are adding an value addition to our answer. So वो हम add कर सकते हैं यहाँ.
So in this question, I like this word in particular. कि क्या perspective है gender justice का. Gender justice is not simply about a legal thing. कि आप जाओ law है तो you have filed a case and you got justice. वो नहीं है. It's much more broader in terms of interpretation. Uttam, you would like to add something here?
Yes,
Or,
sir.
Satyam, maybe.
The point I was like you covered, sir, when we talk about gender justice, basically, so we have to basically expand the horizon, right? We have to expand the horizon to third gender. You covered the transgenders, basically.
Okay, then. Thanks a lot. Let's move on. Question number 17. Now, this is another interesting question. Because we're running short of time, we cannot discuss all the questions. Another 2-3 questions, which I think are the tricky ones. So 17 is one of them. Development and welfare schemes for the vulnerable by its nature are discriminatory. It's a very nicely worded question.
Yeah.
The development and welfare schemes for the vulnerable by nature are discriminatory. Do you agree? So, Uttam, would you want to go for this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah, please.
So if we decode the question, sir, we need to first identify कि vulnerable है कौन, right? So vulnerable का मतलब क्या होता है basically जो कि disadvantaged position पे है, like what child, women, farm labor, manual scavengers, SC, STs, old age, disabled, they are all vulnerable sections basically, right? So the question is development and the schemes for vulnerable sections by its nature are discriminatory, right? So discrimination here can be seen in basically two-worded way, right? So one perspective is we can see it in a positively discriminated because vulnerable section do not have basically equal or same capabilities as the other section, right? So they have different capabilities.
If we
They have
can
different-
add, Uttam, if we can describe what is the positive discrimination here, कि हमने जब भी देखा तो negative discrimination की ही बात
Yes, yes,
कर रही है.
yes.
जब भी हम न्यूज़पेपर में पढ़ते हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं कमी के बारे में कहते हैं. But what is the
हाँ.
positive discrimination here, if you can explain?
हाँ, पॉजिटिव डिस्क्रिमिनेशन वही बता रहा था कि कैपेबिलिटीज जो हैं सबकी अलग अलग होती है, सबके पास सेम रिसोर्सेज या स्किल्स या साधन नहीं है, राइट, कि वो रिसोर्सेज को यूटिलाइज कर पाए. तो इस वजह से गवर्नमेंट ने बेसिकली या फिर स्कीम्स ने उनके साथ पॉजिटिवली भेदभाव या डिस्क्रिमिनेट किया, राइट. सेकेंड पॉइंट वुड बी कि सोशल जस्टिस, टू एंश्योर दैट सोशल जस्टिस हो उनके साथ. तो सोसाइटी इज वेरी अनइक्वल इन टर्म्स ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, इन टर्म्स ऑफ वेल्थ, राइट. So basically to redistribute the sources, right, to basically empower the vulnerable sections, to decrease the inequality in society, the schemes are basically positively discriminated, right? And basically the problems of the vulnerable section are very poor. The conditions where they live in are very basically different, right? So that's why we use positive discrimination. And one more thing we can say that there is a very high wastage of resources. For example, if we do not do positive discrimination or discrimination, right, तो क्या होगा, सबको सेम चीज मिल रहा है, राइट, बट उसमें क्या हो रहा है, मिस टारगेटिंग हो रही है, मिस यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ फंड्स हो रहा है, राइट. So that's where the main problem is. That's why we basically go for positive discrimination.
So without discriminating positively, the way you've discussed, चार चीजें होंगी. One is we will fail to appreciate कि हर vulnerable group के problems अलग हैं. Tribal groups के अलग problem हैं, aging के अलग हैं, women के अलग हैं, child के अलग problems हैं. So we will not be able to identify the problem specific solution. That's one. Second, if we are not discriminating and identifying, we might not target the programs properly. So targeting problem हो जाएगी. Third is, if we are not discriminatory, we will not be able to develop specific skills required to overcome some vulnerability or some disability. So problems alag hai, skills alag required hai. We must ensure that they are properly targeted, that the welfare policies are not cornered by, maybe less deserving people. That's why if we are talking about welfare programs, by nature, they have to have some element of discrimination. That's what the question is, right?
Yes, sir.
So the idea is that while we are providing opportunities for everybody, we must also safeguard, okay, some groups, some communities, and do additional things for them so that the opportunities given are properly utilized. इसको I think आप उत्तम बोल रहे थे empowerment है.
Yes, sir. Social
you have
empowerment,
to-
basically, we can call it.
You have to give opportunities. You have to empower the group. You have to develop the skills, and importantly, also ensure that the group is properly accepted by the others also. आपने सिर्फ अगर दे दिया opportunities, but you are not ensuring that their acceptability increases, तब भी वो problem of discrimination या disability जाएगा नहीं.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else you want to add on this?
So basically, yes, sir.
In this question, we can also write about the schemes. If we are giving a specific example related to the positive discrimination, like the scheme Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, where we are specifically focusing on the girls which are in the age of the 5 to 10 years. At the age of their marriage and 21 years, they can get some amount of money for their education, for their marriage. So we are positively discriminating the age group of the woman. We are not targeting the completely woman, but the specific area, specific age group.
Because उनकी problems unique हैं और बहुत अलग हैं.
Yes, sir.
That's why.
Yes, we need to
हाँ.
explain
Yes,
about the schemes
makes
as well.
sense.
Yes, sir. At last, sir, basically, we need to basically sense of belonging बढ़ाना चाहते हैं हम उनका, ताकि they feel pride by getting included with it, right? They participate on their own, basically, right?
So equal करके, we might not be able to do justice until we follow a positive discrimination approach for the development.
Yes.
Uttam, Satyam, you want to add something?
Just a small point, like if I had to conclude, I would conclude it on a very opposite note, deliberately probably. So the question says that welfare schemes are discriminatory in approach, right? And we have all discussed how it is positive discrimination. I would rather say that, it's not discriminatory at all. What the schemes are doing is they are addressing the needs of the specific sections. So all the schemes, so if there is a scheme that addresses my concern or my weakness, there is a scheme that addresses your concern and your weakness, there is a scheme that addresses everybody's. So there are different schemes. Of course, a single scheme cannot address everybody's concern and weaknesses. If we look at them in a single bouquet, it's not like all of them serve different people. They all are meant for the people of the country, right? So put all the schemes in a single basket, and what you see is basically non-discrimination.
Everybody has something to work with, and
if they have some weakness or some vulnerability, right? So if you are already capable and you have everything, it's okay. Then you are already there. Let us say my next generation falls into the trap of poverty, right? There are many ways to help them, starting from the food, grain, PDS distribution to EWS reservation. There's a wide gamut, right? So it's not like ek ko mil gaya ab nahi milega. It's just meant for everybody. So I would say in that sense it's not discriminatory. In that sense it wants everybody uplifted. It wants to help all the people of the country. In that sense it's not discriminatory.
Okay, I get you. It's not leaving anybody behind. Okay,
Yes,
it is giving the programs are offering something for all those who are deserving.
Yes,
Okay.
that is
Sir,
what
at last, sir, with the role of technology, basically we can go for personalized, personalized उनके जो भी needs होंगे health में, education में, right? With the AI, for example, healthcare में individual based disease diagnosis हो सकता है. So we are basically targeting the vulnerable section, right? And basically catering to their personal needs, right? So delivery जो one size fits all approach हो रहा था, right? We are basically going uneven and basically targeting the vulnerable section so that their जो problems है उनकी वो solve हो जाए with the advent of technology.
ऐसे questions answer करने के लिए अब मुझे I'm asking myself what all do I need? Number one, I need to know the concepts very well. Number two, I should know all what is happening and names of the specific initiatives and programs. Third, exam condition में ये सब जोड़ जाड़ कर like सत्यम से एक ऐसे लिखना होगा, okay, समझाते हुए the concepts. It's really, I mean, I do not know, all our viewers and listeners, do you see the intricacies involved now? It's not simply what is, backwardness. It's not simply write a note on vulnerability. It's not simply give a list of the programs. I hope you all can see कि demand किस level पे है अभी. You must know the concept called development. You must know the concept called vulnerability. You should know what is discriminatory approach. And you must know the programs which have been launched, and then try to perhaps answer and do justice to this. Okay, so in some ways, yeah.
मुझे एक phrase याद आ रहा है इस गवर्नमेंट का इस क्वेश्चन से रिलेटेड. They always told us कि सबका साथ सबका विकास. So means the scheme for everyone and the development for everyone.
Yes. So okay, let's move ahead. Excellent. Now, next question number 18. I do not know how many of them did justice to this question. Question was, skill development programs have succeeded in increasing human resources supply to various sectors. In this context of the statement, analyze the link between education, skill, and development. So, when me and the team, Devender, Satya, Uttam were discussing this particular question, we had quite a blast. I do not know if we have prepared that PPT slide or not.
Yes, we prepared.
But maza aa raha tha.
Yes, I'm sharing here.
So guys, yes, here is. So we just had a discussion. How do we link it? Ye teen term. Once the sentence says that whatever skilling missions we have done, it's doing a good work. Okay, it has supplied some benefits to all sectors. But the link batao between education, skill, and employment. What's the link? So education is formal education, school education, language writing, numerical ability, scientific approach, enrollment. So education in that sense. Skills is some skills that you've acquired in terms of ability, capability. It's possible I have education, but I lack skills. Skills make me employable. Skills give me guarantee of some jobs. Skills make me valuable in the economic system. So skills, the vocation skills ho gaya, occupational skills ho gaya. Okay, and employment, a job that I have. Ye teen ko main rakha table mein. So this is what we did. If I have education, but I have no skills, employment may not be possible. Okay. In most cases, given the type of market economy we have moving towards some kind of soft capitalism, increased competitiveness, if I have education and no skills, more likely that I will not be easily employed. Okay, I am unemployable. Okay, so that's one relationship. Yeah, all our viewers, I hope you are listening to this. A very nice question. Relationship तीनों के बीच में क्या है बताओ? So education, yes. Skills, no. Employment, yes or no. But more likely, no. Because I'm unemployable. Education, no. But I have skills. Can I get employed? Yes, I can get employed. But the problem is without education, I cannot have a kind of employment security. I can be exploited. I'll be vulnerable. I have got no safety net. Okay, and I have limits beyond which I can't grow. So I'm vulnerable. Okay, gig economy में यही होता है. Education नहीं है, कुछ skills हैं, probably हैं, partly नहीं है. Employment है, but the system changes. You are vulnerable. A third case. No education, no skills. Absolutely. Again, employment hoga, it's a kismat wali baat hai, but low-end jobs, mining, rag pickers. Rag pickers have no education, no skills, and they're extremely vulnerable. And finally, okay, if I have no education, no skills, I may also have no jobs. In that case, I depend on programs like MG Narika types. Now we also have one job guarantee program, okay, for the urban populations also. So that's the relationship. And I can always add one point that if I have education and if I have skills, दोनों में अगर yes है, okay, then again employment is assured only if the economy has expanded. Economy has enough sectors, diversity. Economic has the capacity. Think of typical Kerala model, where we have education, we have skills, but employment prospects are limited. There we'll talk about maybe labor agreement other countries. We talk about expanding economy. कुछ हद तक इंडिया में ये भी हो रहा है. Okay, and pandemic was the example of that. Good education, good skills, but economy has shrunk, so employment is impacted. So online students, did you understand this question now? I mean, I'm very happy to be discussing this, partly because I think this was a very unique discussion. I do not know if you guys have thought on those lines.
Sir, can I add
Yeah,
a little
Satyam.
perspective?
Please, yes, do,
So,
please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, I would add a corollary from a different place, which is like there are basic sciences, for example, physics, chemistry, and biology, and then there are applied sciences like engineering. So
Yes.
education and skill has that kind of relation between basic sciences and applied sciences. The skills
Yes.
are more often than not derived from education, but they are not completely dependent upon education. Also, skills are the translation of education into something which is demand, which is
Yes.
right. So applied sciences, what they do, they just fulfill the demand of the society. What is needed in the society, they do. Skills fulfill the demand of the industry. What is needed in this industry, they do. Right. So skill, for example, in the slide, it was beautifully put. Even the gig economy as having skills. One may argue, what skills do you need? But even driving is a skill. You can't drive it. Even reading the invoice is a skill.
Yes,
Making
yes.
sure the transaction takes place, whether it is paid or not paid. They know the basic English to actually do all this work, right?
Yeah, and they should also have the digital capability also.
They do have
Yeah.
digital capability. Yes, sir, exactly. So it's not like there is no skill, right? So I would add just that point. So there's this just relation, there's this just relation between the three altogether that I wanted to point out, though it's not necessary at all the places. For example, if we compare the richest people in India with the richest people of, say, USA, we invariably find that the richest people of USA have much higher education levels than the richest people of India.
Yeah.
So there is not necessarily that relation everywhere. The last thing I would like to say, that when you said that if you have both education and skill, the economy needs to expand, I would rather say, sir, if you have both education and skill, you need to be the one who is expanding the economy.
Okay.
You need to be the
And you become an
entrepreneur.
entrepreneur.
Yes, sir. You are doing that. You are creating employment. I think that is something that needs to be done rather than wait for employment.
Okay. That's a interesting perspective. So online students, I hope you're enjoying this conversation. Sometimes a study should go beyond books, and the question paper demands that you appreciate the questions at another level. You are looking at issues around you, examples around you, and then relating to whatever you have read. I hope all of you are watching us intently and learning from whatever we can. Shortage of time, we can't discuss all the questions, but do let us know what you think about our conversation. One last question. Okay, I know we have run short of time. We're supposed to get over by now. Last question. Question number 19. The expansion and strengthening of NATO and stronger US-Europe strategic partnership works well for India. What is your opinion about this statement? Now, see, this question actually came as a surprise to me, because if you look at the narratives that we have, around what India should do vis-a-vis NATO, the common narratives, and officially we have said that we don't want to be part of NATO. Jaishankar ji has gone on record to say that India is capable of handling China on its own. We do not want any partnership. We're not part of any military alliance. In fact, in Russia-Ukraine war, we have rebuffed NATO. In fact, NATO has other partner countries also, in the form of Japan, in the form of Korea, Australia, and they offer the same status to us. They call this as the NATO plus. Okay, but India declined to become a part of that. And then this question frame kya hai, ki that it works to our benefit. The expansion and strengthening of NATO and strengthening US-Europe partnership works well for India. So I was surprised. But then when I'm studying it a bit more deeper, I realized that we must differentiate between two things. One is, does India want to be part of a military alliance? The answer is resounding no. Okay, because being part of military alliance ka matlab yahi hoga that we will get dragged into a conflict that we do not want to be called out for. We have not begun the conflict. The conflict mein hamara koi stake nahi hai. It is no point that we should be part of any of this US or Russia or China-led wars that we have. That's why we're very sure we'll not be part of any military alliance. We'll not join alliance formally. But then, can we have partnerships with these organizations? The answer is absolutely. So in partnerships, I'm not tied down by one group. I can be a partner with ASEAN. I can be a partner in Quad. I can be a partner in the Indo-Pacific strategy. At the same time, we can be a partner in the NATO, and with the US and Europe. So partnership is a different word, where we are working and collaborating in some ways without we committing ourselves to the agenda of that group in a very narrow defined boundaries. So yes, in that sense, absolutely. Now, why this will work in India's favor, there are 5 reasons for this. Number one is that this type of partnership, which invariably will be a strategic partnership, India already kar raha hai. India has a strategic partnership with Israel, with Russia. We have it with Japan. We have it with ASEAN. We've elevated our relationship to strategic level even with US. So it's perfectly fine. We can have another partnership because when we use the word strategic, then our partnership includes defense agreements, technology transfer, in particular, the critical technologies. It includes collaboration in terms of military intelligence also. It means collaboration in space technologies. So can we have this type of a partnership? Yes. One, we already are doing it. Number two, it gives us access to many other domains. So yes, good. Number 3, this partnership will actually elevate India's role in geopolitics. If I stay out of partnership, we might get isolated. So yes, as a part of India's larger agenda of becoming an important global player, we must have a partnership with these powerful organizations and groups. But we have a partnership as long as we have that element of strategic autonomy also. Okay, so it's up to us how we maneuver, how we decide, and not becoming a blind member, tied down by their articles, tied down by their compulsions. So yes, we maintain our autonomy and we do this. Another is many of these partnerships can actually be part of a larger economic network. Okay, because see, you cannot dissociate economy from security. You cannot dissociate economy, trade with issues of security, peace, counterterrorism, and so on. This partnership will help us in our economic consolidation also. Just as now we have India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor is almost like extension of the NATO itself in some ways, European, and link that with India. That's benefit. And the 5th benefit is that it will definitely help us counter China more credibly. It's not that we need that to counter China, but if we can be part of these groups, it does give us some advantage, some edge to deal with China's ambitions, to deal with China's hegemony, and its designs to overwhelm the rest of India and South Asia. And then, while we are having this Indo-Pacific strategy, India is a very much part of that Indo-Pacific strategy. So if we can be partnering NATO and the Europe it consolidates our position in the Indo-Pacific. Then perhaps India is one of the key players in Indo-Pacific because of our strategy. So that gives us the position that we want. We always have wanted a kind of leader position in Indian Ocean as the net security provider, as controlling the maritime domain awareness in terms of managing humanitarian assistance and disaster initiatives. So with this collaboration, India's position in the Indo-Pacific, Indian Ocean also gets elevated. So yes, while we do not want to be part of any alliance as such, but we can definitely be part of partnerships that will help us. And एक और point ये है that somehow India's relationship with Russia has not been working out properly. I mean, I was reading an article, it says, India-Russia relationship आज के date में is essentially only on two objectives. One is an emotional thing. पहले से रहे हैं, पहले से help किया है. So we don't want to break that umbilical cord, emotional aspect है. Second, बहुत tactical है. Okay, that we want oil from Russia, we want the gas provided from Russia, and very specific, some defense collaboration with Russia. Otherwise, we do not see Russia really expanding our strategic depth beyond a particular point. So it's need that India diversifies itself out of Russia, but then not get trapped in alliance which are anti-Russia or anti-China and make it difficult for us. So that's the analysis of this question. I know Satyam, you'll have some points on this. You have interest in IR. Why don't you go, please? Tell us what else we could have added or discussed.
Add a whole dimension. So the question is expansion and strengthening of NATO and a stronger US-Europe strategic partnership. It is, I believe, also in the context of Ukraine wanting to join NATO. And the consequent Russia-Ukraine war that is taking place right now. So expansion of NATO would include just not countries like India, say NATO plus whatever they want to create, but also expansion within the Europe and inclusion of more Eastern European countries, right? So if we look at it in that sense, the whole US-Europe strategic partnership, it actually helps us in the short run. Then maybe in the medium run, because currently we have adversaries to our north, which is China, which is probably a strategic threat. Not probably, it's certainly a strategic threat to the country. And it augurs well for us to have, democratic countries of the world coming together. I'm deliberately using the word democratic countries of the world because the nature of polity often decides what friends you make. Birds of same feather flock together. It's very difficult for a democracy to be very close friends with the authoritarian regimes or such sort of countries. So this is one part of it. It helps us in the short term where we are collaborating more with the Western countries because we see there are more commonalities. Thankfully, there are more complementarities as well. They want service sector, outsourcing. We are there. They want more manufacturing, which is more reliable and will not probably cause another, outbreak of pandemic. We are there. So we are more reliable in that sense, and we need partners that, we can also trust. So India has been very active in that. However, if we look at long term, I don't think it, works very well for India. Because that's simply because India has always wanted a multipolar world.
Yeah.
A closer US
in fact,
tie.
Now that you're telling me, Satyam, I think I have missed this point completely in this discussion.
Yes,
the
sir.
question is more about rather that what does expansion of NATO mean for India?
And US.
So I think that angle I have missed out. You're very right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. That's a very good perspective.
So,
yes.
The more integrated Europe and US becomes, the more we will put Russia into the lap of China. And we have two strong poles again emerging maybe not in terms of countries this time, like was the case in the previous Cold War, but in terms of two very large and powerful blocs, which are way too powerful for any other country. And we don't want that to happen. We want a multipolar world. We want China to be
So
powerful.
we can disagree with the statement.
We can say
Yeah.
it like
Yes,
said,
I think
we can
that's
say,
fair
yes,
enough.
it's
I think
short term,
I can
yes.
see your point. I can see your point. That what's the opinion? We can say we don't agree in the long run. It can be not right. It works well for India, quote unquote, pucha hai. So will I discuss, yes, we can have a collaboration with them, but in general expansion of NATO and they picking against Russia and China can actually be against our long-term interests. Okay, so we don't have to agree with this. Yeah, I get you, Satyam. A good point. Yeah, viewers, I hope you all have noted this. Yes, Satyam, please continue.
Yes, sir. That's what I wanted to add. That's all.
Fine. I think we are done. Okay, we could only have time to discuss these 10, 12, 13 questions. All our viewers, this is the invitation for 21st September scholarship test. Scan the code and you can avail of discounts. You're free to take a test and review your progress also. Having said this, thanks a lot for joining in. A good, nice conversation. I hope you all learned, you take back some insights, some inputs. Although in general, it was very quiet today. I have seen most of you interact a bit more. Okay, Vaishnavi, Kaveri, Nadia. Okay, we have Abhir, okay, Akshay, Saif. So thanks for joining in, Swagatika, Prashant. Do let us know if you like these conversations. We can have more of these. We have the discussion of GS paper 4 tomorrow, and we have discussions of GS paper 3 day after tomorrow. Okay, so yes, we have taken some time, but I would want you to be part of the conversations. So anything else you want to tell us, online viewers? Any inputs from your side? Yes, the participation today is not as much, but fair enough. Okay, maybe the excitement initial days mein hota hai, but all those who have been part of the discussion, I hope you take back something, you learn something from us. Nadia, Mary, thanks a lot. Thanks so much. So all of you, thanks a lot. Good night. Okay, see you all tomorrow on the ethics paper discussion, same 8 o'clock. And day after tomorrow, we'll have discussion on paper 3, economy, environment, science and technology, and issues of internal security. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prashant. All the best, my wishes. Bye. Good night. And thank you, dear panelists, Devender, Uttam, and Satyam. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.